stop. Just look at this. Do you see that? That bright blue beast of an excavator carving a hole the size of a small ocean right in front of my garage? That is where a very specific, very awful neighbor used to park her car. And trust me, the $120,000 I spent on this aquatic middle finger? Worth every single penny. You see, most people deal with annoying neighbors who steal a package or play loud music. My neighbor? She declared war on my quiet little piece of paradise. She looked at my favorite hand-tended prize-winning garden, and she decided to turn it into a personal parking lot. I tried to be nice. I tried to reason. I tried to talk to her like a rational person. It didn't work. When I finally had enough, when she made that last, unforgivable mistake, I made a promise to myself. I promised that I wouldn't just get even. I promised I would build something so big, so permanent, and so unbelievably satisfying that she would never forget the day she messed with my petunias. This is the story of how a spoiled, entitled person destroyed everything I loved, and how I responded by sinking my retirement savings into turning her favorite parking spot into my private resort. You won't believe the legal loophole I found, or her face when she realized her car was trapped by a 40-foot deep hole in the ground. Stick around, because the final shot of this pool, right where she thought she had a guaranteed spot, it is pure, unadulterated revenge porn. All right, welcome back, folks. I know that hook was a lot, but I needed you to see the climax before we get into the conflict. This video isn't just about a pool. It's a masterclass in property law, extreme pettiness, and what happens when an HOA has absolutely zero power over a certified madman who's had enough. First, I have to show you the garden. We're talking about an area that was my happy place, and I'll walk you through the 3 distinct times my neighbor, let's call her Karen, decided it was her right to use my land. The 3rd time, that's the one that broke me. Second, the plan. You can't just dig a pool on a whim. The city, the permits, the structural integrity, it was a nightmare. But the key was a tiny, easily missed line in my property deed, an old utility easement that Karen was illegally using as her personal parking space. It was the crack in her fortress. And third, the final act. The day the construction crew showed up and the look on her face when she realized not only was her favorite illegal parking spot gone, but her car was effectively locked behind a 40-foot deep hole in the ground. Listen, before we get started, I want to be crystal clear. This whole thing, it cost me $120,000 for the pool and another $15,000 in legal fees just to make sure every T was crossed and every I was dotted. She came at me with 2 cease and desist letters. My lawyer laughed. I'm going to show you the actual blueprint where the pool sits exactly 1 inch away from my property line and 2 feet away from the common sidewalk. Completely legal. We're not talking about a kiddie pool here. We're talking about a 6-foot deep, heated, saltwater paradise. This wasn't cheap. It was nuclear. And you need to stick around because the story of her car and the tow truck driver, it's worth the wait. Let's rewind a bit. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the petunias. This is what it used to look like. See this stretch? It was about 10 feet wide, running right alongside the curb where my property ended. Legally, the first 8 feet belonged to me, and the last 2 feet were a small, mostly unused patch of communal grass. But it was my side of the street, and I loved it. I spent hours out here, roses, petunias, some really beautiful hydrangeas. This was my zen. And then came Karen. She moved in a few months ago. She has 2-car garages and a driveway. Yet every single day she parks her massive sedan in this specific spot right next to my garden. Now, here's the problem. Her garage was full of junk, and her driveway was always blocked by her son's ancient pickup truck, so the curb was her go-to. Now, the road is a little narrow, and one day I noticed her rear tire was just touching the stone edging of my garden. No big deal, right? A slight misjudgment. I figured I'd be nice. I wrote a polite, handwritten note, sealed it in a nice envelope, and stuck it on her windshield. That was the first mistake. Assuming politeness works on people like her. The next day, the note was on the ground. A couple of my petunias were definitely flattened. Okay, maybe she was having a bad morning. Maybe she didn't see the curve as she pulled out. I decided to put up a small, decorative fence. Not a 6-foot privacy fence, just a little white 2-foot-tall picket fence. Clearly ornamental. Clearly marking the boundary. Cost me about $80 at the local hardware store. I felt like a suburban hero. I'd solved the problem. Nope. Wrong. She came home around 6 that evening. I watched from the window, hopeful. She pulled in right up to the fence. She hesitated for about 2 seconds. Then she opened her car door, stepped out, looked at the tiny fence I had just installed to protect my property, and let out a little puff of air. I watched her kick the first fence section just enough to unseat it. Then she went to the second section, pulled it right out of the ground, and tossed it on the lawn. She moved 3 sections of my newly installed decorative fence, and then she parked her car not just over the boundary line, but a full foot into my flower bed. This wasn't an accident. This was a statement. This was her saying, "Your boundaries mean nothing to me." Now I'm angry. I'm seeing red. But I remembered the advice. Don't react immediately. Document, document, document. I took pictures. A lot of pictures. I called the HOA. Useless. They said, it's a property line dispute. We can only enforce covenants, not trespass. They basically shrugged their shoulders. I went to the police. They said, it's a civil matter. It was a legal dead end. She had found a loophole in the system. Minor property damage is too small for the police, and a boundary dispute is too big for the HOA. She had free rein. So I decided on a passive-aggressive countermove. I waited until she was gone, and I bought 2 massive decorative concrete potters, the kind you can't move without a dolly. I filled them with soil and planted 2 beautiful, thick-trunk shrubs. I placed them right at the edge of my property line, but slightly inside the boundary. There was no way she could park over the line now without hitting solid concrete. The next day, I woke up to a sound that made my blood run cold. A scraping, grinding sound. She was trying to fit. She was willing to damage her own car just to prove that she could still park there. She was completely unhinged. She finally gave up, parked next to the planters, and then I saw it. The pure, spiteful final coup d'etat that led to the pool. She didn't scratch her car, no. She didn't move the planters either. She walked over to the cracked planter, reached into her car, and pulled out a large, heavy bottle. It wasn't water, it was engine oil, used, black, sludgy. She poured old engine oil all over the remaining flowers, all over the soil I had spent years amending. She didn't just flatten them, she poisoned the earth. She made sure nothing would ever grow there again. She looked up at my window where she knew I was watching and gave me the most satisfied, smug smile you can imagine. That was it. That smile, that's when the switch flipped. The anger was gone. It was replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. She had destroyed my garden. I was going to destroy her convenience. And I knew exactly where to start. I didn't want the police or the HOA. I wanted a permanent, structural, 6-foot-deep answer.
The oil incident happened on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, I was at the county recorder's office. By Friday, I had spent $1,500 on an official survey and a meeting with a property law attorney. My question to him was simple. How can I legally make it impossible for her to ever park in that spot again? The lawyer gave me the usual speech. Fences, hedges, maybe a lawsuit for damages. Nothing permanent, nothing satisfying. I was deflated. But then I showed him the old county map. We started looking at the very edge of my property, that communal patch of 2 feet right next to my old garden, the place where her tire is always rested. The lawyer, a guy who had probably seen it all, paused. He pointed at a little box on the map legend. "See this dashed line?" he asked me. "That indicates a utility easement. It's a 10-foot wide right-of-way for the city to access the main sewer line, which runs exactly under your old garden and this communal area." Utility easement. Okay, so what? That's when my lawyer hit me with the knowledge bomb. He explained that a utility easement is meant for public works. You can't build a permanent structure on it. You can't put a shed there or a permanent deck. But, and this is the important part, the city also restricts anything that could impede their access, and that included excessive parking. More importantly, he said, you can't build a house over it, but what about something that is technically legal to build near a property line, but is impossible to park a car next to? He pulled out a zoning code map. We looked at the setbacks. My property allowed for a pool to be built with a 4-foot setback from the property line. The property line, remember, was right at the edge of where she had poisoned the ground. But here was the ultimate twist. The utility easement she was parking on, you can't put a permanent concrete structure on it. But my pool, it was gonna sit 4 feet back from the easement, entirely on my land. However, the size of the pool, a massive 20 by 40 feet, meant the required construction zone, the earth displacement, and the subsequent concrete decking would physically take up the entire area she used for maneuvering her car. Even though the pool wasn't on the easement, the required surrounding infrastructure would make the easement totally unusable for parking. My lawyer looked at me, and I looked at him. We both started smiling. It was beautiful. It was surgical. The final plan, I would build a massive, permanent, concrete, unmovable swimming pool that would be completely legal and whose construction would necessitate the permanent closure of the street parking area she had claimed as her own. I spent the next 4 weeks going through the most insane paperwork of my life. The pool design had to be perfect. The location was non-negotiable. I instructed the pool company, if the pool is not the absolute maximum size allowed by the setback rules, I will not pay. I contacted the city engineering department about the utility easement. I didn't mention the neighbor. I just said, I'm concerned about vehicle traffic over my planned construction area. Can I restrict non-resident parking for safety? They sent me a form, a legal temporary closure permit for construction. It was like they were handing me a loaded gun. This permit was my golden ticket. It allowed me to place temporary barriers for safety and for the duration of the 8-week dig and concrete pour. It meant no parking, no exceptions, right in front of her car's spot. The anticipation was almost too much. I had to wait 2 weeks for the crew to be available. Karen kept parking her car on the black, oil-soaked dirt as if to mock me. Every morning I would look out and just whisper, "Enjoy it while it lasts." The night before the dig was scheduled, I couldn't sleep. I kept running the scenario in my head. What if she's gone when they start? What if she parks somewhere else? The whole plan depended on her routine. She was a creature of habit. Her car, that big, ugly sedan, was her anchor. She parked it, covered the front window with a sunshade, and usually didn't move it until 8:30 a.m. the next day. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. I watched from the darkened window as the sun came up. Her car was there. Perfect. It's 6:45 a.m. I can hear the first truck now. This is it. This is the moment I've been planning for 5 weeks. If she tries to move the car, the entire $135,000 operation is ruined. I need that car there when the barricades go up. The first truck was the foreman's pickup. The second was the dump truck for the dirt. And the third was the big boy, the massive, beautiful house-shaking excavator, the one that was about to carve out my new life and her misery. The crew chief walked over with a clipboard. I handed him the permit. He looked at the address, looked at the neighbor's car, and just grinned. He knew exactly what was happening. They worked fast. It was 7:15 a.m. The orange barricades went up first, then the chain-link temporary fence. They placed them not just on my property, but encompassing the required safety zone for the machinery. And this safety zone, coincidentally, completely boxed in Karen's car. She was parked 1 inch onto the public street, which was technically fine, but now the only way out was over a newly constructed 3-foot-high construction barrier or through the back of a dump truck. The foreman gave me a thumbs up. He had done his part. I did mine. I got my camera ready. 8:25 a.m. Showtime. Karen stepped out sipping her travel mug of coffee. Her eyes went straight to her car. Then she saw the excavator. Then she saw the barricades. She stopped dead in her tracks. The cup almost fell out of her hand. She walked right up to the temporary fence. She grabbed the chain link and shook it. "What is this? What in the world do you think you're doing?" I walked out calmly, holding the official permit. "Good morning, Karen. You're just in time. We're starting construction on my new pool." "A pool? You can't put a pool there. That's street parking. And you've blocked my car. Move this fence now. I'm going to be late for work." She was vibrating with rage. This was the moment of pure satisfaction I had been waiting for. I held up the permit. "I can, actually. I have all the permits right here. City approved. This entire area is a temporary, legally authorized construction zone for the next 8 weeks. It's a safety requirement. Your car is inside the safety perimeter." But I parked there. I've been parking there for months." You were parking on my property, which is now an oil-contaminated former garden, and you were also using the public utility easement. The city's safety regulations, which I'm happy to show you, restrict all unauthorized vehicles within the perimeter of a dig this size. You know, for safety. Wouldn't want anyone falling into a giant hole. I could see the wheels spinning in her head. She was looking for a way out. She ran to her car, opened the door, and looked at the space in front of her. The barricades were immovable. The excavator was a metal titan right behind the fence line. She started calling people. The HOA, her lawyer, probably her mother. I just leaned against the fence and waited. About 20 minutes later, a tow truck shows up. She waves it down like a shipwreck survivor. "Thank goodness! This maniac has trapped my car! I need you to pull it out!" The tow truck driver looks confused. He assesses the situation, the barricades, the excavator, the construction signs, and the clearly marked permit. He said, "Ma'am, I can't enter an active construction site. Look at all these orange barriers. It's a liability nightmare." Pointing at me. "He trapped me. He did this on purpose." Calmly, I handed a copy of the permit to the driver. "Sir, I have a city-approved construction permit authorizing the closure of this area for safety. The car is parked in an unauthorized zone. If you move the car, you are violating a municipal safety order." The driver handed the paper back to Karen. "Look, lady, I'm not losing my license over a property dispute. Your car is going to have to stay put until the permit expires."
Or the construction company clears it. You need to call the police, but they'll just tell you the same thing. This is a legally closed zone. The tow truck driver shrugged and drove off. Karen was left standing alone, next to her trapped car, staring at the huge, noisy excavator as it begins to dig. That was the moment of ultimate victory. The excavator roared to life, digging the first scoop of dirt out of the spot where she used to park her car. The hole got bigger. The construction zone felt more and more permanent. Her car stayed there for 4 full weeks until my lawyer finally sent her a notice stating that the site would be temporarily unblocked for 30 minutes on a Sunday morning for essential materials delivery, and if her vehicle was not gone by then, it would be towed at her expense. The 4 weeks that car was trapped? Priceless. She had to park 3 blocks away and walk. She had to watch every single day as the thing she hated, my happiness, was literally being built right in front of her. Look at this. 6 feet deep, salt water, tile deck, a beautiful glass safety fence that follows the property line perfectly, and right there on the concrete apron, that beautiful, shiny, sun-drenched concrete that is so perfectly unparkable is a custom-engraved tile. It reads, "Dedicated to the memory of the Petunias." She tried to sue me for intentional emotional distress. My lawyer responded with pictures of her dumping engine oil, the HOA's non-response, and the completely legal permits. The case was dismissed. The pool stayed. And that little patch of poison dirt, it's now the foundation for a small, perfectly manicured patch of artificial turf and a lounge chair where I can sip a cocktail and enjoy the quiet. So that's the story of how $100,000 was the only way to find peace in my own backyard. It wasn't cheap, but the level of satisfaction when I take that first dip in the pool that was built out of pure, righteous spite, unbeatable. Now I know what you're thinking. What happened to the HOA? Didn't she try to get me fined for something else? And the answer is yes, she absolutely did. After the pool was done, she filed a formal complaint to the city about my drainage. She claimed I was going to flood her garage. The story of how I dealt with that completely ridiculous and yet somehow legally complicated issue is another hour-long saga. It involves a laser level, a retired engineer, and a truly
petty amount of gravel. Thanks for sticking around to the last sentence. Don't forget to like and subscribe.